Tonight, let me tell you the story of a road that cannot be seen by stone or wood, but only by the soft veil of sea mist. On the western coasts of Ireland, where cliffs meet long waves and gulls circle like drifting thoughts, people once spoke of a god named Manannán MacLear, the sea king who carried sailors across waters not with ropes or sails, but with quiet guidance. His gift was not thunder or storm, but a hush of fog that wrapped ships and hearts alike. They called it the Mist Road, and in that road was a promise. Even when sight failed, the way home would appear. Tonight, we follow that story slowly, like a lantern light through fog, letting it steady us for rest. The night begins with a keeper of a lighthouse. His name could be Eowyn, though in other tellings he is simply the keeper. He trims the wick, leaning over the lamp as it breathes in rhythm with the tide below. The walls around him are damp with salt, and every few minutes the low call of a foghorn drifts through the window. Eowyn listens as though the sea itself is speaking, and in truth, many in his village believe that it is. For the sea is not only water, it is a god's presence, ancient and gentle, who wears the mist like a cloak. The lighthouse keeper has heard sailors say that when the fog is thickest, they feel hands more certain than their own, steering the tiller. No one shouts of miracles. They simply nod, grateful to arrive. In Celtic lore, there is an old phrase, Feth Fiata. It means a cloak of mist, sometimes of invisibility, sometimes of protection. Poets and druids were said to draw it over themselves to walk unseen, to pass into other worlds, or to shield companions from harm. Some believe Manannán himself gave them that gift, the way a father might hand down a tool that fits perfectly in the hand. On the coast, the same word came to mean the fog that appears without warning, rolling from sea to land in silver folds. When villagers whispered, "The Sea King lays his cloak tonight," they were not afraid. It was not a storm to flee, but a road to trust. Eowyn knows these stories. As he trims the lamp, he remembers his own grandfather, who once rowed a coracle out to gather fish. A storm had risen, sudden as a cry, and all seemed lost. But then, the grandfather told, a white mist settled, and the waves calmed as if lulled to sleep. He rowed by the sound of gulls, faint in the distance, and soon saw the familiar cliff line of home. Some neighbors doubted, saying the old man was simply lucky. But others nodded, saying, Manannán carried him. And when Ian repeats that tale, he feels something soften in his chest. He believes, not in the kind of belief that argues or demands proof, but in the way one believes a hearth will still glow at dawn if it is tended. Tonight, as the fog thickens outside the lighthouse, Ian steps onto the balcony. The lamp turns slowly above him, its light cutting small arcs through the whiteness. He breathes the damp air, and each drop seems to settle into his skin. There is no fear, only a kind of vast gentleness. The sea is hidden, yet its voice is near. Each wave folds against rock like a sleeper shifting in blankets. Ian thinks of sailors out there, far from their harbors, and he hopes they too feel this presence, this steady hand. One story says that Manannán's cloak was not only mist, but also music, that when sailors heard the low hum of foghorn or the rise and fall of the tide, it was the god himself humming them toward safety. Another story tells that his cloak made enemies forget anger, softening hard hearts as fog softens sharp lines of land. Perhaps that is why disputes in coastal towns often settled after long nights when the mist lay heavy. The world, veiled in gray, reminded people of gentler ways. Ian returns inside, sets the kettle near the flame, and waits for the soft sigh of steam. He writes in the logbook, "Mist heavy, lamp steady." The words look plain, but to him they carry weight. Heavy mist means Manannán is near. Steady lamp means he is doing his part. Together, divine and human, sea and shore, they make a promise of safety. He sits with the cup in hand, listening as the kettle cools. and in that silence feels the company of a god who is more hush than roar. The night deepens. Outside, the village sleeps, roofs silvered by fog. Somewhere a dog barks once, then curls back into dreams. The tide swells, then falls. The lighthouse keeper's eyes grow heavy, but his heart is calm. He remembers the words of his grandfather. When you see nothing, trust that something still carries you. The keeper smiles and lets his breath slow. For tonight, the mist road stretches across the waters, invisible but sure, and he is part of its tending. And so we end this part of our story with a simple truth. Guidance does not always shout or shine. Sometimes it drifts softly, like mist, covering the world in safety. In the quiet of the night, with fog folding over sea and land, there is comfort in knowing that every journey has a gentle edge. And as the kettle cools and the lamp glows, Ian rests, certain that Manannán's road lies ready for those who wander. The mist lingers through the night, and while the keeper rests in his chair, the sea continues its quiet conversation. Beyond the reach of the lighthouse beam, a small fishing boat drifts. Its crew are brothers, Aidan and Colum, men who have known these waters since childhood. Yet tonight the coast has vanished, swallowed in gray. Their oars dip gently, sending ripples that vanish almost as soon as they form. The men do not speak much, for every word seems hushed by the fog. Instead, they listen, waiting for the sound of gulls or the faint note of the horn. They trust that something larger than themselves watches the way. Aidan remembers a story their mother told by the hearth. She said that long ago, Manannán rode across the sea not in a boat of wood, but in a chariot pulled by horses whose manes were waves. Where he traveled, mist rose to hide him from mortal sight. When he chose, the fog lifted, and islands appeared, some real, some not. There were tales of Tir Nanog, the land of youth, where time rested and sorrow thinned. Sometimes travelers returned with memories that felt more like dreams, unable to tell if they had truly touched that shore. Perhaps, their mother would whisper, the mist road does not only bring sailors home. Perhaps it carries them for a while to places of peace before returning them to the world they know. Tonight, as Aidan squints into the whiteness, he thinks of that story and feels no fear. If the road leads to home or to a moment of dreamlike calm, he will accept either. Colum dips his hand into the water. The sea is cool, almost silky, as though the fog has folded itself into the tide. He feels a strange calm spread through him. Quarrels and worries that pressed during the day seem far away now. In the village, debts are argued and nets sometimes tangled, but here, wrapped in this silver veil, he remembers only laughter from childhood summers and the warmth of fires on winter nights. Perhaps the old stories were right. The mist does not simply hide, it heals. It blurs the sharpness of memory, leaving what is gentle. The boat glides on. Slowly, faintly, they hear it, the low, steady voice of the foghorn from Ian's lighthouse. It is not a warning, but a guide, one note rising and falling, like breath. The brothers exchange a glance and smile. They row toward the sound, each stroke sure, though the world is still unseen. For a while, the fog grows even thicker, and shapes seem to flicker at its edges. Aidan thinks he sees the outline of a great horse, mane streaming like foam, galloping across the waves. Colum imagines a figure cloaked in silver, walking just ahead, leaving no footprints but opening a path nonetheless. They do not speak these visions aloud, but both know the god is near. In Celtic tradition, there were charms sailors whispered before launching their boats. Some called directly upon Manannán, asking him to fold his cloak in blessing, so that enemies or storms might pass unseen. Scholars have written that the Feth Fiada was sometimes used by poets as a metaphor for inspiration itself, the way a verse can descend like mist, covering the mind until words emerge. Others said, Druids used it in battle, not to destroy but to protect, to create confusion so that no blood need fall. It is striking, is it not, that in many stories the god of the sea was less about fury and more about protection, less about conquest and more about return. The sea could always take, yet here was a presence that gave back, that softened. The brothers row on until the faintest glow begins to touch the mist. Dawn is near. The gulls, unseen all night, suddenly cry overhead, stitching the pale sky with their wings. At once, both men feel relief. The veil begins to thin, and through the whiteness rises the black shape of the cliff, then the tower of Eowyn's lighthouse, its lamp still burning. They laugh, not loudly, but with the kind of release that is soft and grateful. The mist road has brought them back. They know that in the logbook the keeper will write, "Boat returned, all safe." Yet they also know the true line hidden within. Manannán carried them. By the time they step onto the harbor stones, the sun has begun to edge across the Gee. Horizon. Nets glisten with dew, and cottages glow faintly. Villagers greet them quietly, for in a place where fog rules the night, loud voices seem out of place. Aidan and Colum will tell the story differently to different ears. To children, they will say they followed a road only gulls could see. To elders, they will nod and say, simply, "The Sea King's cloak was kind," and everyone will understand, for the words need no proof. Back in the lighthouse, Ian pours the last of his tea and watches the harbor fill with early life. He feels the weight of night lift, leaving in its place a gentle satisfaction. He knows some will say the fog is no god, only weather. But to him, the quiet safety it brings is more than enough. He closes the logbook, whispers a blessing, and prepares to rest. Outside, the mist still drifts, softer now, like a blanket folding into morning. And so this part of the tale settles with ease. The mist road has done its work again. A boat is home, hearts are calm, and the sea breathes steadily. We are reminded that protection need not always be loud or fierce. Sometimes it arrives as a veil that hides and heals at once. Tonight, that reminder rests with us too, like fog against skin, like silence after song. The morning opens slowly, but the story of the mist road does not end with dawn. In the village, when work resumes, people carry with them the memory of the night. Children play along the shore, chasing waves and pretending they too walk an invisible road. Elders sit by doors, weaving tales from years long past, when they or their kin were saved by the Sea King's kindness. Among them is a woman named Myra, old now, but her voice carries a warmth that gathers listeners like birds to grain. She tells of the time she was a girl and her father, a healer, was called to tend a sick child on a neighboring island. The sea was rough, and clouds swallowed the stars. Yet her father went, rowing with steady hands. Mare swore she saw mist rise, thick but shining, and within it a figure walked ahead of the boat. By morning, the child was healed, and her father returned safe. That was Manannán, she says, and the mist was his road. The children lean closer, their eyes soft with wonder, and the old woman smiles, for she knows that memory itself can be a kind of harbor. As the day passes, gulls stitch lines across the pale sky. Fishermen mend nets, women set bread to rise, and the lighthouse keeper at last lies down to rest. Yet even in sleep, he dreams not of darkness, but of orchards veiled in fog, their fruit safe from storm. In dream, he hears the low hum of the Sea King's cloak spreading, wide, a sound like a lullaby. The dream carries no command, only reassurance. The road is always there. When he wakes again at dusk, he feels as though the night has already spoken to him, and he greets it with calm. Stories of Manannán stretch beyond one coast. Some say he gave warriors mist to hide them from enemies, but in another telling, he used it to make peace, concealing weapons until anger cooled. In a different strand of lore, his cloak guided souls after death, carrying them gently across waters to islands where sorrow no longer followed. Scholars debate the meaning of these tales, wondering if the Feth Fiada was symbolic of memory, or of forgetfulness, or of imagination itself. But for the villagers who live with fog each season, such questions feel simple. They know mist is real, it covers land and sea, and when it comes, the heart is reminded to be patient, to trust what cannot be seen. Whether or not the god walks there, the effect is the same: safety and softness. As twilight returns, Aidan and Colum walk the harbor, nets over their shoulders. They look out at the horizon, now silver blue. Tomorrow may bring clear skies, Colum says. Aidan nods, but part of him hopes for mist again. For in that quiet vale, he found more than fish or safety. He found a stillness that felt like forgiveness, as if the sea itself had laid aside all harshness for a night. Perhaps that is why people love these stories. They remind us that even vast, restless waters can hold gentleness, and that guidance often arrives without noise. The night deepens, and once more the fog creeps inland. Lamps glow faintly through it, and the village grows hushed. Ian, awake again, lights the lantern, its slow-turning beam steady as breath. Somewhere out on the water, another boat sets forth, trusting in both lamp and God. And within the cottages, families settle, the sound of waves blending with hearth crackle. Mare hums an old tune, said to echo the Sea King's own song, and children drift toward dreams where mist forms roads across sky as well as sea. Even the gulls grow quiet, resting on the tide. And so our story finds its end, not in thunder or triumph, but in calm belonging. The mist road of Manannán is less about arrival than about assurance, that even when sight fails, a path remains. In fog, quarrels soften. In fog, fear thins. In fog, the heart remembers that it is guided, even when it does not know how. Perhaps that is the truest gift of myth, not certainty but comfort. To know that generations before us trusted the same sea, the same mist, and found their way home. Tonight, as you listen, let the image rest with you. A lighthouse glowing through fog, a steady beam turning, waves folding softly below, and somewhere unseen, a road of mist stretching farther than eyes can reach. You do not need to walk it. You only need to know it is there, waiting to carry you whenever you drift. That knowledge itself is enough to ease the mind, to let breath slow, to let sleep come like tide upon shore. So let the sea be calm in your thoughts. Let the fog fold gently around you, and may you remember, like the sailors of Ireland, that guidance often arrives as a soft veil, covering the world with safety and belonging. The road is always there, the lamp is always lit, and you are always carried home. Thank you for joining me in this story of Manannán's Mist Road. If you enjoyed this gentle myth, I invite you to subscribe for more bedtime tales from the world's folklore, each one told to bring peace to the night. For now, close your eyes, breathe with the tide, and rest in the calm assurance that every journey has a quiet guide. Good night.